Okay, here's a stunning car, one of my favorites, a 1972 Maserati Ghibli. It's named after a North African windstorm. That was back in the days when Maserati was naming their cars after winds. The Mistral is another classic one. It debuted at the 1966 Turin Auto Show. It was designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro while he was working at Ghia. It was in production from 1967 to 1973. It came in two body styles, the Coupe, which was a 2+2, or the Spider, which was a two-seat only car. So this was in production about the same time as the famed Lamborghini Miura and the Ferrari Daytona or 365 GT B4. And it was priced about the same as those two cars. And actually the Ghibli outsold both the Daytona and the Miura. But interestingly, as time goes on, the values of the Daytona and the Miura have skyrocketed, while the Ghiblis have not really gone up that much. I think they're in the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 range, while the Miura is getting close to $1 million. 0 to 60 time for this car is 6.8 seconds. They were notorious for their poor fuel mileage. Apparently it would be in the low to mid-teens at best. I mean, this car is absolutely stunning from any angle. So they started out making the Ghibli Coupe, and in 1969 they added the Spider. And they also added what they called the Ghibli SS. Basically they had gotten into the US emissions issues, so to make up for the power loss, they increased the size of the engine from the 4.7 liter to the 4.9 liter. Horsepower went from 310 to 355, and the Ghibli SSs came fully loaded with AC, power windows, leather seats, all that kind of thing. The total production for the coupes was 1,170. The Spider's 125, and I don't have a number for the SS's. The car that came after the Ghibli was the Coms in 1973. A lot of torque, don't need to rev it high. Steering is a little heavy at slow speeds, but it really lightens up once you get going. Although it is a front engine, apparently most of the engine is behind the front axle. So it's like a 51-49% weight distribution. It's not a lightweight car, I think it's 3,800 pounds. But it's fun to drive. Now, if there's a faster looking fastback car that was ever made, please tell me what it is, because I think this is an incredibly sexy car. Now, it was more of a GT car than a hyper sports car. The chassis technology was a little old school. It has a live axle with leaf springs, has unboosted recirculating ball steering. It did have disc brakes from Lucas Girling. It did have optional power steering, optional radio, and optional air conditioning. So here's the heart of the beast. It's a 4.7 liter double overhead cam, chain-driven V8, 310 horsepower. Its dry sump engine has 340 foot-pounds of torque. It's supposedly a variation on a racing engine from the 1950s. Red line is 5,500, so it's not a screamer like the Miura or the Daytona were. Came normally with a 5-speed ZF transmission, or you could for an option, get a 3-speed automatic, although why anybody would do that is beyond me. So let's fire it up and see what it sounds like. So it doesn't scream like a Ferrari, but has a nice throaty hum of a Maserati. So I don't know how accurate these numbers are, but I read somewhere coupes will run about 50,000. The SS is about 150,000, and these Spiders are 300 to 400,000 in value these days. The question comes up, why are Daytonas worth so much more than the Ghibli, when the Ghibli was approximately the same price to start with and outsold the Daytona? And the answers I came up with, I read somewhere, is the Daytona is considered more exotic because it's 12-cylinder, has the 6 dual Webers, has independent rear suspension. They didn't make as many of them. It has a high red line at 8,000, and it has a flat plane crank, so it sounds great when you really rev it up, while the Maserati is more of a old school V8, a little more American than the hyper-Italian high revving kind of thing, but plenty of torque, just lousy gas mileage. So you may get a live axle and leaf springs, but you can't say that Maserati chinches on the number of dials and buttons on the dashboard. They give you the rev counter over there, speedo over here, oil pressure, ammeter, water temperature, oil temperature, analog clock, and your fuel. And then you have a row of buttons for fans, defrosters, electric windows, instrument lights, popping the fuel cap. So, very busy dashboard. And of course the famous trident in the steering wheel. I believe the trident was adopted by the Maserati brothers because it's on a statue of somebody in Modena, and he liked the trident and decided it would become the symbol for the Maserati company. And then of course you have your 5-speed shifter. So it's a very comfortable cabin. Of course you have the mouse fur dash, and all the seating is leather. Very comfortable seats. And although it's technically a 2+2, this is the seats are down so that you have maximum carrying capacity. Access the luggage area either from in the cabin, or you have a trunk lid in the back, which of course connects all the way through. So you can carry an awful lot of luggage as you go zipping about the continent. It's got those great looking exhaust pipes there.